Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised that the following program contains images and voices of people who have died.
It's the week before Easter at Ernabella, in the heart of Central Australia. Today's Palm Sunday service will be held in the community's newly restored church, about to be officially reopened.
Malako pelukarin janum malako pakanu kunukuare pelinginya aja wiro mularing kangaelo kole ni banyam anang juda pelinginya nga malako tunguri mani.
Old friends have returned, and these celebrations will mark another chapter in a story that began here a lifetime ago. It's more than 70 years since the first Christian missionaries arrived in the far northwest corner of South Australia. They came with Bibles, but they also came with a radically different approach to their work as missionaries. Some here can remember how it all began.
Peter
Nyaningu was just a boy growing up in a traditional tribal lifestyle when those first missionaries arrived in his country.
Kulil bay wiya banyangan na chiji nganna enka bayalid panangka ngurpa.
Ernabella was a sheep station when the Presbyterian Church took over the lease to establish its mission here in 1937.
Over the mission time, nyanganka anang juda wal karib ni ngana nam tungo kucu perangan na keeping kawal karib pe kucu pera painting kawal karib pe warga wela kawal pe kucu pera ngana judang ko kanya anang juda ngana ju kapal lamalang ngana ngabarci.
The Pitjantjatjara people in those days lived in what we would call a camp situation. They lived in small groups, and one of the basic principles of that life was, the people term it ngaparagi, which is reciprocity. Life depended on the fact that you shared, both in the good and bad. And people would build their wilches from spinifex and boughs, very much living a traditional life in that camp situation. But they would come up to the mission for employment in the craft, sheep work and building. And that sheep work was maintained by the mission, and it became very much the foundation of our economic structure.
Ernabella's founder was Dr. Charles Dogood, an Adelaide surgeon and Presbyterian layman.
He went on a tour of that country in the mid-1930s. He was troubled by the conditions of the people living on the edge of cattle stations or towns and suffering a lot from the early contact. Women sometimes, he felt, being abused, the labour of the men being abused. So he advocated the establishment of what he termed a buffer mission station, where the people could have space to accommodate to the changes that were taking place.
We all thought we were a cut above everybody else because I think other places they worked harder to bring the people into the modern day, whereas we thought that they should stay as they were and only change as absolutely necessary.
Right from the start, Ernabella was different because Dr. Dogood had some radical ideas about how it should be run.
It was a Christian mission, a Presbyterian mission, but we were not to interfere with the people's beliefs or way of life, and we were supposed to lead a Christian life, and they could adopt that or not, as they wished. But there was to be no coercion. The children, he said, all those years ago, 60 years ago, that the children were to be taught in their own language. They were to be totally acceptable as they were. We were not allowed to put clothes on them or take them away from their families. They were allowed to be taken out of school to go on travel through their lands with their parents, and then they'd just come into school when they came back.
In the early years, the missionaries at Ernabella conducted church services in the open air. Then in 1944, a simple church was built out of bush materials.
Nganana, wade jurango ya mono, jiji juranga na koleja, ka nyaranga, wale, George Ben Babaya no welja. Nganana, janpi, spinapeg, jalea katingo, monola, welja no welo, mono, kapalo lango nganana, jo ti palo la nyelange wate menma jeje joda ka wenke nganana nyenang.
As interest grew, work soon began on a more substantial church. Again, everyone pitched in. Even the bricks were made on site.
Nganana wagarinda yango balo joda. Kananga machine nanga na ba jumenta balan bricks palanta modo ka wayanga jon ko on ba line nanga brick chuda ka building ko bai kala mongawan ke bija bai na wilbaranga ode jon ko bai na janga wan ko kati bai wilbaranga ya chocho ko to.
There was one thing that hadn't arrived yet, and the bell. So we had to put the bell on afterwards. So the bell was here lying on the ground. And I thought, how are we going to get this bell up into the bell tower? So I climbed up the rope. Right up the top. Pulled up the bell on the rope. Just climbed up on it. And I tied it up there. It was quite a feat. And then the bell was ready to ring.
The Ernabella Church was officially opened in 1952. 400 Angangul attended and 20 were baptised, the community's first Christians.
Some of those people immediately began to participate in services, taking prayers, readings. It wasn't long before they themselves were preaching in their own tongue.
Palang ay rawang ko channel la chung ngagaring ka palang ro ngayelo channel ngay helda chunu ngayelo channel la nindi.
But still there was no pressure on the Angangul to give up their own traditions.
Chana wangangi chana koleni banyondo nje wandi nya ora chana nindi ngara ko jukur purkarango purkarangala to undon juyango ka malanga ngana na enderengo waja
It seems to me that their stories and their ritual, they were answers to what are the great questions of life. Where did we come from? What are we doing here? Why are we here? People would say I'm a kangaroo man or an emu man descended from the original dreaming or Jukorba beings who they said had created the mountains, the rivers, the trees, the waterholes, everything in their environment they saw as the work of those spirit beings. And because you belonged to that group, you had responsibilities to uphold the story, look after the sites, maintain the ritual.
Ngayo lady ngarengo ngalo jarala. Ngalo jaranya ngayo ko. Ngayo lo na apungolo ja. Wada apungolo ja apu nyara ja para ngara lawana ni ngayo ko ngora kana apo canpingulo. Apo nyara canpi porno karong. Ulur pa. Ngaja engineering ko nende ngayo ko no ngayo lana ni college ko to. College balaja theology study ko ngaran nga ngayon ko no karanya manda anang.
Ritual and story were key to the Angangu's understanding of the Bible and the missionaries' teaching of the Gospels.
It became obvious to me that there were a lot of parallels, more with the Old Testament. In fact, sometimes I coined the phrase that Israel were a people on walkabout. They were getting water from rocks, they were crossing deserts, and one got quite a lot of insights. I think I learnt more about the Old Testament through my contact with Pitjantjatjara people than perhaps I learnt in theological college. With the New Testament, there were some problems. For example, having a look at the parables. Not many of the parables that Jesus told had a direct relevance to Pitjantjatjara life. There were no treasures or wedding feasts or kingdoms and things that are spoken about in the parables. The ones that perhaps they found most relevant were ones, again, related to introduced aspects like the Good Shepherd, because they were shepherds. And the same with gardens. They worked in the mission garden, and the parallels about the weeds and seeds and so forth. In their prayers there would be a lot of emphasis on fire and water and wind, things that were very relevant, and these things that are used to symbolise the spirit or the presence of God.
By far the most successful method of engaging the Anangu was through the creation of a mission choir, for which Ernabella would become famous.
Song was very influential in the people accepting Christianity. Song was central to the social life of Aboriginal people. People were always singing. I remember at Ernabella, it might be a bit of gossip, but a woman would be walking across and then she'd break into song about that. And people accepted the Western form of singing through the school.
Kunga joda tela ko nende ngangi kabaje bal black modanga walga jodangi chu banya music kar bal la ngonende nganja kola la nende ngola kangali nende ngonjana ngo embo bulga redo wala banya wala music joda jara para bal la ngolta kayolo rawang ko ko nga bayawa.
In 1954, the choir went on tour for the first time. They travelled 1,400 kilometres over dusty roads on the back of a truck to Adelaide to see Queen Elizabeth on her first visit to Australia. Later, the choir sang at a church in Alice Springs, where they met a special guest, Prince Philip. In the mid-60s, the choir toured Victoria and South Australia.
At that time, when a lot of people in Melbourne and other provincial centres just didn't meet with Aboriginal people in those centres were delighted to hear them singing, being able to talk with them and share with them. So that experience was a great experience for me and for the choir members.
For many, this was a golden era at Ernabella. Their choir and church were front and centre of mission life.
Family Sunday ka jana mama ngunjum walda wajoda wenki jana chutoran go dress up ulja wuludara clean ka wiro ngara la pukula pe in ma wiro in ka uta ka ko wan garangan wanta video wan pukul banyana pe.
Today, the singing tradition continues at Ernabella. These school students are rehearsing for the Palm Sunday celebrations this coming weekend. The community is busily preparing for the church reopening. But Ernabella is no longer a mission.
So much change has happened. We were at the forefront of some of that change in suggesting that we should change from being a mission to a community.
Today, Ernabella is a self-contained Aboriginal-run community with a rich cultural heritage. It has its own council, store, medical facilities and school.
If success is measured by the urban mythology around the importance of the mission days, it must have been very successful because people talk about them as the good days.
The running of the Ernabella mission was handed over to the community in the mid-70s. Today, the school has around 150 students from kindergarten to year 12 and boasts an 80% attendance rate.
The understanding of the importance of school in Ernabella has derived from the fact that it was important in mission times. They wanted a pathway that was going to be as uncomplicated as it possibly could be as people moved from an old way into what was going to be inevitably a new way.
And many things have changed at Ernabella. But the policy of teaching the children in their own language has not.
We are committed to children being strong in Pitjantjatjara. We know educationally that children that are strong in first language are going to be stronger in a new language. There is, really strong research and evidence that suggests that the children that went through the mission school era were well educated and literate as adults.
Wan kacanya alpenyina cha kunyundu lawan. Kan main pewiro kanya pukul pa life wironya. Ngai ka kuare ka cucu nya ngaja banyak missionary curang kanyiningi. Palu banyak kuare pa palu cana banyak ngan mencoba apa kan menu palu cana cucunya 100 milanu anang ucura. Ko cucunya ka cana kanyir gari jago.
The Ernabella Mission Church was listed on the State Heritage Sites Register in 2001, but was closed 5 years later when asbestos was found in its roof. It fell into disrepair until the Anangu decided to channel some of their own funds into renovation. With contributions from state and federal governments, work began last year.
It wasn't in a very good state at all. It had been left for a couple of years. Petrol sniffers used it as their living quarters. We had the advantage, I guess, in that it was a masonry block building and the structure was quite sound, except for all the doors and door frames had gone, the interior furniture had all disappeared.
For many, the reopening will be an opportunity to again worship in the church they helped build.
Ana church banyak ako pertandingan. Nairi di mula bakada karengo, church nya balu. Kangen nara pertandingan iya juga. Palat ako, ka jangan palat aku ya nak kuari. Kangen anak kuari cungoringan next week. Morala en mapul kain kara nyagal koni. Oi lo mula.
The big day has finally arrived. And it's an enthusiastic return to the old church, now restored to its former glory.
Kuda's older brother. Says I'm his older brother, but I'm 10 years younger than him. Yeah.
This is a place which is a strong place with a strong story that so many people have been blessed through. So many people have come back, like a pilgrimage to Jerusalem.
Inside, there are mementos of days past. And for some, today's reopening offers much more, an opportunity to exercise their ministry.
1993, Pijangon Nabilogo 1993, ga blessing Juno, Yondo Chokochara. 2010 tawerkan bola. Parinya nanya.
Mun canjum nani chut yang ngana na jungore bola. Kakara ko korun bola. Ngana na hela ngani mun palo ngana na welcome lani.
In some ways, if the mission hadn't started, one wonders what would have happened to the people. There would have been more and more, I think, of destructive forces on them. The petrol sniffing, which came in the very late 60s, early 70s, drugs, alcohol, and more recently the pokies. And I think we did provide a buffer for quite a while. Obviously, people like Peter and Graham, they become Christian leaders, and I feel sincere in their faith. Some of those women they put me to shame.
Pukul banyak apa? In mawila juta in kara nya walkun. Iri dia lah itu menungan lah. Kalau menungan kuar itu pukul aja pelok pukul pop. Kuar cari mereka. Kau wilo melakukan.
Kangairo kole ni banyak anang juta pelingnya nganga malaku cungurin ngani. Menunjukkan kolangan na every Sunday or sometimes cingomong ka ulo ngana na cungurin kolangan walput ko anang wanting
cuma na cucu an ko pa karlo nanya ko ma pa Ngai lo ni jana missionary jura pichang o heri picha pai. Nyako. Tanya palo jana kuto pulka mokoro pa ana ngo jura.
Looking back after 50 years, it was marvellous. And they really made my life here an amazing experience that has carried with me ever since.
At Ernabella, the bonds cut deep both ways. When the mission's founder, Dr. Charles Duguid, died in 1986, the community bestowed on him their greatest honour.
Chudanga junguringo. Palulanya aldingo kala palumparingo. Munula ngaparji palonya ngayaldingo tulunba ngarinjago nganamba nguranga.
Free.